If your husband uses your dead father's money to build a company in his name, you are supposed to either swallow it or pay for the fight with everything you have left. At 9:12 a.m., I was barefoot on the cool tile in our Austin kitchen, pouring coffee into my chipped blue mug, the one my dad brought me back from a roadside diner outside Amarillo, because it said "Home Sweet Home" in crooked letters. Ryan stood by the fridge in his white dress shirt, sleeves rolled with that practiced, casual look men wear when they want to look hardworking without looking nervous. He was tightening his tie while his phone rested on the counter, face down, like it was hiding something. "Did you review our investor email?" he asked, like he was asking if I'd remembered to take out the trash. I blinked at him. "What investor email?" He smiled without showing his teeth. "The one we sent last night. It's a big day. Try to be on the same page." I picked up my own phone. The lock screen was already lit. A notification banner slid down. "Press release Mercer Innovations announces founder and CEO Ryan Mercer." The words felt like they belonged to someone else's life, like I had accidentally opened a stranger's mail. I tapped it. The page loaded. A clean headshot of my husband in a navy blazer, arms crossed, standing in front of our prototype like he had built it with his own hands. Underneath, bullet points, polished and sharp. Series seed round. Strategic partners. The same talking points we had practiced together in our living room. Late nights, me pacing with a legal pad while he timed my pitch on his phone. Only my name wasn't anywhere. I stared so hard my eyes started to sting. "Ryan," I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine. "Why does this say you're the sole founder?" He didn't move. He didn't reach for the phone. He didn't even look surprised. He just kept tying his tie, slow and careful, like there was all the time in the world. "Because that's the cleanest story," he said. "Investors like a clean story." "My dad's money is in that company," I said. The words came out flat. "His money, the money he left me, the check I wrote from my inheritance account." Ryan's tie slid through the knot. He adjusted it in the mirror above the sink. "And I turned it into something real," he said. "Madison, don't do this right now. We have the showcase at noon." I looked down at my hand, still wrapped around the mug. The coffee had stopped steaming. On the counter, next to my car keys, his wedding ring sat in a small circle of light from the window. It wasn't in his pocket. It wasn't on his finger. It was just there, like an object he'd gotten tired of wearing. "You forgot your ring," I said, because my brain reached for the safest thing it could hold. He glanced at it like it was a receipt. I didn't forget. My stomach tightened so fast I felt it in my throat. "So you took it off." He finally looked at me. His eyes were calm, almost bored. "It's distracting," he said. "People ask questions. Today is about the company." "Today was supposed to be about us," I said. He let out a small breath through his nose, a sound that wasn't a laugh but wasn't kind either. "That's exactly the problem," he said. "You keep making it personal." I set the mug down carefully because I didn't trust my hands. The bottom of the mug clicked against the tile counter. I could hear the ceiling fan spinning. I could hear a car pass outside. Everything sounded too clear, like the world had turned up its volume while my body tried to shut down. "You sent a press release," I said. "You made yourself CEO. You erased me." He picked up his phone at last, not to show me anything, just to slide it into his pocket. "I simplified the messaging," he said. "You're welcome." I felt something cold settle behind my ribs. I thought about my dad in a hospital bed, the smell of antiseptic and orange slices, his hand shaking as he signed a stack of papers so I wouldn't have to fight with my stepbrother later. I thought about the day I got the inheritance transfer and cried in my car because it felt like blood money, like the last piece of him had turned into numbers on a screen. I had used that money anyway, because I believed in what I was building, because I believed in Ryan. "I'm on the patent," I said. "My name is on the patent application. I'm the inventor. The prototype is mine." Ryan's mouth tightened. "You are emotional," he said. "This is why I had to take the lead." I stared at him. "Had to?" He walked past me toward the hallway, grabbing his suit jacket from the chair like it belonged to him. "Madison," he said, still calm, still controlled, "we are going to the incubator. You are going to smile, you are going to stand next to me, and you are not going to make a scene. You plan this," I said. He paused at the doorway and turned back, his hand on the doorframe like he owned the house too. "I planned for reality," he said. "You can either accept it or get out of the way." Then he left, and the front door shut with a soft, final sound. I stood there in the kitchen with his wedding ring in the sunlight and my father's mug cooling on the counter. My phone kept buzzing with new notifications. Congratulatory texts from people I barely knew. LinkedIn alerts. An email from a reporter asking for a quote from founder Ryan Mercer about his inspiring mission. I didn't answer any of it. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop with fingers that felt like they didn't belong to me. The table was scattered with normal life. A grocery list, a folded receipt, my badge from the incubator that said visitor in red letters because Ryan insisted I didn't need a staff badge yet. It looks more professional if there's one clear leader, he had said months ago. My inbox loaded. There it was, an email sent at 11:43 p.m. the night before, from Ryan to an investor group with a line that made my stomach drop. Please see attached updated deck. Founder-led vision. Under it, a PDF with my slides, my words, my diagrams, but the title page now read Mercer Innovations, Ryan Mercer, founder and CEO. In the corner, the small logo I had designed at 2 a.m. After a 12-hour shift at the rehab clinic, my scrubs still on, my hair in a messy knot, thinking about my dad and how he used to tell me, Maddie, build something that matters. I clicked the attachment and flipped through. Every place my name had been, it was gone. Every place I had written we, it had become I. Even the photo of the prototype in my hands had been cropped, so only my wrists showed, like anonymous labor. My throat burned. I pressed my knuckles against my mouth, trying to force the feeling down. My eyes drifted to the ring again. It looked heavier now, like it had gained weight in the last 10 minutes. At 2 a.m., my phone rang. The screen showed a number I recognized from the incubator front desk. Madison Cole? A woman asked when I answered. Yes. This is Kendra at Lone Star Launch, she said, bright and professional. Just confirming you'll be at the showcase today. Mr. Mercer asked that security be aware of a situation. He said you may be under stress and might need assistance staying calm. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The air in my lungs felt too small. I'm sorry, I said. What did he say? There was a pause, the kind people use when they're reading from a note they didn't write. He said you've been having a hard time emotionally. Kendra continued. Careful now. He asked us to have someone nearby in case you become disruptive. My fingers tightened around the phone so hard it hurt. I looked at the clock on the microwave. 10:03 a.m. The day hadn't even reached lunchtime, and Ryan had already started building a story where I was the problem. I forced my voice to stay steady. Thank you for letting me know, I said. I'll be there. I ended the call and sat in silence. Outside, a lawnmower started up somewhere down the street. The sound was ordinary, almost comforting, and it made everything inside me feel even more unreal. I picked up the ring. It was warm from the sun, smooth and familiar. I turned it in my fingers and saw the engraving inside, the one we had chosen together. Always. It felt like a joke now, stamped into metal. I set it back down exactly where it had been and stood up. My knees wanted to buckle, but they didn't. I walked to my office nook in the corner of the living room, opened the filing drawer, and pulled out the thin folder labeled Dad. Inside were copies of the trust documents, the seed investment agreement he had insisted on, the one he made me sign in front of a notary because he said, people get weird about money when grief hits. I laid the papers out on the desk, one by one, like evidence. Ryan thought he had taken my company with a press release. He thought he had taken my voice with a phone call to a receptionist. He thought he could put a calm face on betrayal and call it leadership. He was wrong, because the truth was, I had been building this thing long before Ryan learned how to pronounce the names of my software files. And the truth was, my dad had left me more than money. He had left me paperwork. He had left me signatures. He had left me a structure meant to protect me from exactly this kind of person. I stared at the showcase badge on my table that said, Visitor. By noon, I would walk into that incubator and watch Ryan try to turn me into a cautionary tale in front of a room full of strangers. And by the end of the day, I would realize that the life I thought I had, my marriage, my company, even my own reputation, was already being dismantled piece by piece, right in front of me. I drove to the incubator with both hands locked on the steering wheel like, if I loosened my grip, the whole car might drift off the road. Austin traffic was normal for late morning. Food trucks lining South Congress. People in workout clothes carrying green juice. A guy on a scooter weaving between cars like he didn't believe in consequences. It all felt insultingly ordinary. Like the world had decided today was just another Tuesday. At a red light, my phone buzzed again. Another email notification. Subject line, Congratulations, Ryan. I flipped the phone face down in the passenger seat and kept my eyes on the red light until it turned green. By the time I pulled into the Lone Star Launch garage, my hands had stopped shaking. Not because I felt better, because something inside me had gone very still. I parked on Level 3, Section D, the same place I had parked for months while helping Ryan build his network. which really meant standing next to him while he talked and handing him business cards when his hands were full. I turned off the engine and sat there for a second, listening to the ticking sound of the hot engine cooling down. I thought about my old job at the rehab clinic. The smell of disinfectant wipes, the hum of fluorescent lights, patients learning how to button shirts again after strokes, small victories that actually meant something. Ryan used to tell me that work was noble but small. I grabbed my bag, my laptop, and my badge that said visitor in red block letters. The elevator ride to the main floor was quiet, except for a guy in a startup hoodie talking loudly into his AirPods about burn rate and runway. I watched the floor numbers light up one by one and felt like I was going to court instead of work. When the doors opened, the lobby was already buzzing. Pop-up banners, coffee urns, people in blazers and expensive sneakers. The big digital screen by the front desk cycled through the day's presenters. At the top of the list, Mercer Innovations, 12 p.m. showcase stage. Underneath, in smaller font, founder and CEO Ryan Mercer. No mention of me. No mention of the occupational therapy research the product was built on. No mention of the 3 years I spent testing grip sensors with veterans who couldn't hold a fork anymore. Madison. I turned. Kendra from the front desk stood a few feet away, smiling the tight smile of someone trying to be polite in a situation they don't understand. "Hey," she said. "You made it." "I did," I said. Her eyes flicked over my shoulder like she was checking if someone else was coming with me. "If you need a quiet room today," she said carefully, "we have one reserved." "I'm good," I said. "Okay," she said quickly. "Good, that's good." She handed me a printed schedule even though I already had it on my phone. Her fingers brushed mine for a second, and I could tell she felt awkward, like she had been told something about me that didn't match what she was seeing. I walked past her toward the main floor. Ryan was already there, standing in a circle of 3 men and 1 woman, all of them wearing the same polite investor smile. He saw me almost immediately. His expression didn't change, but his shoulders straightened slightly, like he had spotted a potential problem that needed managing. "Excuse me," he said to the group, then walked toward me. "Madison?" he said quietly when he got close enough that no one else could hear. "You came." "I said I would," I said. He looked me up and down, not in a husband way, in a risk assessment way. "You look good," he said, like that surprised him. "Thanks." He nodded toward a row of chairs near the stage. "You can sit there during the presentation. Afterward, we can talk about next steps." Next steps. Like I was an intern he had to offboard. "I'll stand," I said. His jaw tightened. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." "You already did that," I said. For a second, something sharp flashed in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by that calm, controlled expression he used in meetings. "Remember," he said softly, "a lot of people are watching today." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm here." He studied my face like he was trying to predict weather. Then someone called his name, and he turned away, already smiling again, already performing. I moved toward the back of the room, near one of the demo tables. Our prototype sat there under a clear display cover, matte black casing, soft grip pads, the small blue indicator light I had insisted on because some of my patients struggled with bright white LEDs. I reached out and touched the edge of the table, not the device, just the table, grounding myself. Pretty cool, right? I turned. A guy in his 20s with a conference badge that said university partner stood next to me, staring at the prototype. "Yeah," I said. "It is. He's supposed to be speaking at our lab next month," the guy said. "The founder, Mercer. He seems sharp." I nodded once. "He is," I said. The lights dimmed slightly. A staff member walked onto the stage and started introducing the noon presenters. My heart started beating harder, but my hands stayed steady. Ryan walked up when his name was called. The spotlight hit him just right. Navy suit. Confident posture. That same voice he used when he convinced me to leave my clinic job because we're building something bigger than us. "Good afternoon," he said into the mic. "I'm Ryan Mercer, founder and CEO of Mercer Innovations." Applause. Polite. Interested. He started the pitch. Our pitch. My research. My patient stories. My demo videos. Every time he said, "I built this," something inside my chest twisted, but I didn't move. I didn't react. I just watched. Halfway through, he pulled up the slide with the origin story. The one about a family experience with loss that motivated the product. My throat tightened. "My late father-in-law," Ryan said smoothly, "taught me that independence is everything." Not my father. Not the man who spent 2 years in and out of rehab learning how to hold a spoon again. Ryan had turned him into a motivational bullet point. My nails dug into my palm hard enough that I felt the skin break. I didn't look down. The pitch ended to stronger applause this time. People like clean stories. Ryan thrived on clean stories. The moderator stepped up. "We have time for a few questions." A woman in the front row raised her hand. "Can you talk about your early funding sources?" Ryan smiled. "Friends and family mostly," he said. "People who believed in me early." I felt something cold spread through my chest. The moderator nodded. "Last question." A man near the aisle stood up. "What's your long-term IP protection strategy, given the medical application overlap?" Ryan answered smoothly, like he had practiced it 100 times. Maybe he had. The session ended. Lights came up. People moved forward, already forming little clusters around him. I stayed where I was for another minute. Then I walked toward the hallway that led to the private meeting rooms. Not because I was running, because I needed quiet. Inside the hallway, the noise dropped to a low hum. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes for 3 seconds. Then I opened them and pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. 1 voicemail. I pressed play. "Madison, this is Daniel Ortiz from Fairbank Trust. I need you to call me back as soon as possible. It's about the Cole family investment structure and a recent access request submitted under Ryan Mercer's credentials. There are irregularities." My heart didn't race. It didn't even speed up. It just settled into something heavy and certain. Because in that moment, standing in a quiet hallway while my husband celebrated on the other side of a glass wall, I understood something clearly. Ryan didn't just steal my company. He was already reaching for everything else. I called Daniel Ortiz back from the far end of the hallway, near a vending machine that hummed like it was thinking. He picked up on the second ring. "Madison?" "Yes. You left me a voicemail about an access request." There was a pause, the kind professionals use when they're deciding how much to say over the phone. "Are you somewhere private?" he asked. "Yes." "Okay," he said. "I'm going to be direct. 2 days ago, we received a request to review the distribution structure of the Cole Family Adaptive Technology Trust. The request came through using credentials associated with Ryan Mercer as an authorized spouse." My grip tightened on the phone. "He's not an authorized decision-maker," I said. "He's listed as a spouse beneficiary, not a controller." "That's correct," Daniel said. "But the request wasn't for distribution. It was for a capacity review." For a second, the words didn't land. "I'm sorry," I said. "A what?" "A capacity review," he repeated. "Basically, a preliminary step that can be used to justify transferring financial decision authority if there are concerns about the primary beneficiary's mental or emotional fitness." My stomach dropped so fast I had to lean against the wall. "He tried to start a conservatorship process," I said quietly. "We flagged it," Daniel said, "because the language in the request referenced recent instability impacting business judgment. It also included documentation suggesting you had been under psychological care." My chest felt tight. "I go to therapy," I said. "That's not—" "I know," Daniel said quickly. "And for the record, therapy is not grounds for anything like this. But whoever prepared the packet tried to frame it as evidence of impaired decision-making." My eyes moved automatically to the glass wall at the end of the hallway. Through it, I could see Ryan laughing with 2 investors, his hand on the back of a chair like he owned the room. "Was it approved?" I asked. "No," Daniel said. "Not even close. The trust structure your father set up is extremely specific. It requires 2 independent medical evaluations and board review before any capacity proceedings can even begin." I closed my eyes for a second. My dad, sitting at our dining table with a stack of documents and a yellow legal pad, saying, "People do strange things when money and grief mix, Maddie. We're going to make this boring and airtight." "But someone tried," I said. "Yes," Daniel said. "And that's why I called you directly, instead of responding through the portal." I swallowed. "Was it just Ryan?" Another pause. Longer this time. "The legal submission was routed through an external firm," Daniel said. "One you should probably recognize, Westlake and Dunn." My throat went dry. "Our family estate firm?" "Yes." My stepbrother Jason was the secondary executor on my dad's estate." Jason, who had told me at the funeral, "I'm glad Dad trusted you with the money, Mads. I'm not built for that kind of responsibility." "Was Jason listed anywhere?" I asked. "Not on the submission," Daniel said carefully. "But the authorization pathway suggests someone with internal estate familiarity was involved." I let out a slow breath through my nose. "Madison," Daniel said, softer now, "I'm not supposed to give personal advice, but you should review every document you've signed in the last 3 years, especially anything related to business control or medical consent tied to financial oversight." "That is the botter. I will," I said. And Madison? Yes. Huh. Do not sign anything Ryan gives you right now. Not even something that looks routine. I won't. I ended the call and stood there for a full 10 seconds, staring at nothing. Then I opened my laptop and sat down on the carpeted floor against the wall, like I used to do in college when I studied. I logged into our shared company drive. The dashboard loaded. Folders I recognized. Pitch decks. Vendor contracts. Prototype testing logs. Then a folder I didn't recognize. Governance internal. I clicked it. Inside were 3 files. One labeled Board Restructure Draft. One labeled Founder Authority Amendment. And one labeled Wellness Continuity Protocol. My chest went tight. I opened the third one. It was written like a policy document. Clean language, calm tone. It described procedures if a founding member experiences mental health disruption impacting operational stability. It outlined temporary leadership transfer, financial control lockout, communication gatekeeping. At the bottom, a signature block. Ryan Mercer, acting executive lead. Madison Cole, founding clinical director. My name was typed, not signed. But below that was a DocuSign activity log. Viewed Madison Cole IP address, 2:14 a.m. 6 months ago. Acknowledged Madison Cole IP address 2:15 a.m. 6 months ago. I stared at it. 6 months ago. At 2:14 a.m., I had been asleep. Then I remembered. 6 months ago, I had woken up at 2:30 a.m. because Ryan was still in the living room, finishing investor emails. He had asked if he could use my laptop because his had died. I had said yes and gone back to bed. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I might throw up. I opened the Founder Authority Amendment. It shifted operational control to primary capital risk bearer in the event of clinical judgment conflict. Primary capital risk bearer. Ryan. Because he had quietly shifted which account certain prototype expenses were billed through 3 months earlier, telling me it was cleaner for taxes. I sat there on the hallway floor while people walked past the glass, talking, laughing, building futures. And piece by piece I saw it. The press release, the emotional instability comments, the therapy framing, the trust access request, the internal governance files. This wasn't about the pitch today. This was about replacing me everywhere at once. I pulled up the patent portal next. Application status. Pending final review. Inventor listing. Mercer. Ryan primary. Cole. Madison secondary clinical contributor. Clinical contributor. I stared at the word until it blurred. My phone buzzed again. A text from Jason. Hey kid, heard the big news? Proud of you guys? Call me later? I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed, did you talk to Ryan this week? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Yeah, just general stuff. Why? I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the document history on the governance folder. Last editor before Ryan? Jason Cole. Timestamp. 8 days ago. I felt something inside me settle into place. Not calm, not peace. Just clarity. Through the glass, I could see Ryan shaking hands, smiling, already telling the next version of our story. The version where I was fragile, emotional, unreliable. I closed my laptop slowly, because now I understood something that made everything else make sense. Ryan wasn't just trying to take my company. He was trying to legally prove I shouldn't be trusted to own anything at all. And the worst part was, he hadn't started this today. He had started this months ago, while I was still sleeping next to him, still believing we were building the same future. I stayed on the hallway floor until my legs started to go numb. Then I stood up, brushed off the back of my jeans, and walked back into the noise like nothing had changed. Ryan was still surrounded by people, laughing, shaking hands, telling the same story over and over, each version a little cleaner than the last. I watched him for a second and tried to match this man to the one who used to sit cross-legged on our living room rug eating takeout pad thai with me at midnight while we argued about logo colors. It felt like watching an actor play someone I used to know. I walked past the group without stopping. If he noticed me, he didn't show it. I headed straight for the exit, pushed through the glass doors, and stepped into the bright Texas heat. The air outside felt thick and real. Cars moving. People talking. Someone dragging a rolling suitcase across the sidewalk. Life continuing like my world hadn't just tilted. I sat on a concrete bench near the entrance and pulled my phone out again. I scrolled up to Jason's name and pressed call before I could talk myself out of it. He picked up on the third ring. Mads! Hey! I was just texting you. Yeah, I said. I saw. You at the showcase? He asked. Ryan texted me this morning. Sounds like things are really taking off. I stared at a crack in the sidewalk while a line of ants moved in and out of it. Jason, I said. Did you help him draft any legal documents about me? Silence. Then a small laugh. What? No. Why would you ask that? Because Westlake and Dunn submitted a capacity review request to the trust, I said. And because you edited a governance file in our company drive 8 days ago. Another silence. Longer this time. Madison, he said slowly. You know, I can't talk about estate-related stuff casually. Was it estate-related? I said. Or was it Ryan asking how to lock me out of my own life? Okay, he said, sharper now. You need to calm down. I closed my eyes for a second. I am calm, I said. Ryan told me you've been under a lot of stress, Jason said. And look, I'm not taking sides, but from a legal standpoint, if you were making erratic decisions, I wrote the original prototype code while working full-time, I said. I built the clinical test groups. I secured the first research grant. What part of that sounds erratic? You're being emotional right now, he said. There it was. Same word, same tone, like they were reading from the same script. Did you help him? I asked. Jason exhaled. I could hear him moving around like he had stepped outside wherever he was. I looked at some structure documents, he said finally. That's it. What kind of structure documents? How? Just business continuity stuff. In case something happened to you. I didn't ask you to do that. You didn't have to, he said. Ryan was worried. I laughed once, and it sounded ugly and sharp. Worried about what? I asked. Me finding out? Madison, come on, he said. You've been different the last year. You quit your job. You isolated yourself. You put all your energy into this startup. That's not healthy. I built a company, I said. With my inheritance. With my research. With my time. That's called work. You stopped coming to family stuff, he said. You barely call mom anymore. Because Ryan said my family distracted me. Because he said real founders cut emotional noise. I pressed my thumb hard into the edge of the bench until it hurt. So your solution, I said slowly, was to help my husband build a legal path to take control of my finances. That is not what I did, Jason snapped. I helped make sure the company survived if you couldn't handle the pressure. I felt something inside me close, like a locked door. You picked him, I said. That's not fair, he said. You picked him, I repeated, softer now. Over me. Over Dad's actual wishes. That's not what this is, he said. But his voice had lost some of its confidence. I looked up at the glass front of the incubator building. Reflections of people moving inside. Ryan's shape crossing the lobby. I hope he was worth it, I said. Then I hung up. My hands were steady. My breathing was normal. If someone had walked past me, they would have seen a woman sitting outside a tech building checking her phone. Inside, something had shifted permanently. I sat there for another minute, then opened my messages and scrolled to Mom. I typed, "Are you busy today?" She replied almost immediately, "Never too busy for you. Everything okay?" I stared at the words. My throat tightened, but I kept typing. "Can we have dinner tonight? Just us." "Yes, of course." 6? 6 is good. I put my phone down and leaned forward, elbows on my knees. A breeze pushed warm air across my face, carrying the smell of food truck tacos and car exhaust. My brain started sorting things into lists. Not emotional lists. Practical ones. Documents to copy. Accounts to separate. Access logs to screenshot. People who needed to see the truth, but only when the timing mattered. Ryan thought I would confront him. Cry. Yell. Make it messy. He didn't understand something fundamental. I had spent years working with patients who lost entire pieces of their lives overnight. People who woke up and couldn't move half their body. People who had to rebuild basic skills one tiny step at a time. You learn patience doing that work. You learn timing. You learn that panic wastes energy you might need later. I stood up and walked back inside. Ryan spotted me immediately this time. He excused himself from another conversation and walked toward me. Fast but controlled. "Where did you go?" he asked quietly. "Air," I said. He studied my face, searching for something. Tears. Anger. Chaos. He didn't find any of it. "Good," he said finally. "Because we need to talk about next phase stuff. Investor dinners. Press interviews. You'll need to be aligned." "I will be," I said. Relief flickered across his face so fast most people would have missed it. "Good," he said again. "That's good." He reached out like he might touch my arm, then thought better of it. "Go home," he said. "Get some rest. It's been a big day." I nodded. "Okay," I said. I walked past him toward the exit again. Slow. Steady. Like nothing in my life had just detonated. Because the truth was, I wasn't thinking about how to fight him anymore. I was thinking about how long he had been building this. And more importantly, how long I had been unknowingly building something he couldn't actually take. I drove home on autopilot, taking turns I had taken 100 times before without thinking. The late afternoon sun bounced off windshields and glass buildings, and everything outside my car looked bright and sharp, like the city had been washed clean, while my life had been quietly stripped for parts. When I pulled into our driveway, Ryan's car was still gone. Good. I needed time. Not to cry. Not to rage. To work. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and closed it behind me gently, like I was entering someone else's house. The air smelled like the candle Ryan liked, sandalwood and something sweet. The living room looked exactly the same. Couch pillows lined up, coffee table wiped clean, the framed photo from our wedding still sitting next to the TV. I didn't look at it for long. I went straight to my office nook and powered on my desktop. Not the shared laptop. My desktop. The one Ryan never used because he said it was too slow, even though it wasn't. It just wasn't synced to his cloud accounts. While it booted, I grabbed a legal pad and started writing. Trust documents pull originals. Patent filings download full history. Bank routing verify which accounts funded what. Medical privacy breach document timeline. Governance folder copy everything. JSON document involvement. Westlake and Dunn request record copies. No emotions, just steps. The desktop finished loading. I plugged in an external hard drive I kept in the bottom drawer, the one I used for old patient research backups. I created a new folder and named it simply Archive. Then I logged into the patent portal first. I downloaded the entire application history. Every revision, every comment, every upload timestamp. The file list scrolled for pages. Design drawings I had sketched on my iPad at my kitchen table. Clinical notes from testing sessions. Email chains where I explained sensor calibration issues at 2 in the morning, while Ryan replied with, "Looks good," 20 minutes later. Then I opened the revision history on the inventor listing. 6 weeks ago, the listing changed from Cole, Madison primary inventor, Mercer, Ryan business director, to Mercer, Ryan primary inventor, Cole, Madison clinical contributor. Submitted by Mercer Innovations corporate account. Approved via secondary founder authorization. My login. I leaned back slowly in my chair. 6 weeks ago, I had been in Denver at a disability research conference. Ryan had stayed home because he said he had investor prep work. He had texted me one night asking for the 2-factor authentication code because he needed to push a file update before the submission window closed. I had sent it. My chest felt tight, but not out of control. More like pressure building behind a dam. Next, I logged into our business banking portal. I pulled transaction histories for the last year. My eyes moved line by line. Prototype materials paid from Joint LLC. Software licensing paid from Joint LLC. Initial development hardware paid from Cole Family Trust Distribution Account. I froze. I opened the details. 3 transfers, each labeled Equipment Expense Reimbursement. Approved by Secondary Household Financial Authority. Ryan. He hadn't just used my inheritance. He had made it look like the company reimbursed him personally for costs that actually came from my trust distribution. I screenshotted everything, saved PDFs, logged timestamps. Then I opened the shared drive again and went straight to the governance folder. I downloaded everything. Then I right-clicked and checked version histories for each file. Board restructure draft originally created by Ryan, later edited by Jason, then edited again by Westlake and Dunn document account. Founder authority amendment, same pattern. Wellness continuity protocol, originally created by Westlake and Dunn template account, then edited by Ryan, then accessed by my login at 2:15 a.m., 6 months ago. I saved the audit logs too. The sun shifted across my desk while I worked. The house stayed quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. Around 4:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Dinner with Mom, 6 p.m. I closed my eyes for a second, then stood up and walked to the bedroom. I changed into jeans and a plain black t-shirt. Pulled my hair into a low ponytail. No makeup except concealer under my eyes. I looked normal. Tired maybe, but normal. Before leaving, I walked back into the kitchen. Ryan's ring was still on the counter. I picked it up, turned it once between my fingers, then set it inside the small junk drawer next to rubber bands and spare batteries. Not dramatic, just practical. Then I grabbed my bag and left. Mom lived 20 minutes away in a small house she refused to sell after Dad died. The same house where I grew up. The same kitchen table where Dad made me sign those trust papers while he told bad jokes about lawyers. When I walked in, she was already setting plates on the table. "There's my girl," she said, smiling. but her eyes scanned my face in that mom way that sees everything you don't say. I hugged her. The smell of her laundry detergent hit me, and for 1 second I wanted to break. I didn't. "Sit," she said. "You look like you forgot to eat today." I sat. She put a plate of baked chicken and green beans in front of me. We ate in silence for about 2 minutes. Then she said, "Okay, what happened?" I set my fork down. "Ryan filed a press release today naming himself sole founder," I said. "And I found out he's been trying to build a legal case that I'm mentally unstable so he can control my trust in the company." Mom didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She just went very still. "How long?" she asked. "Months," I said. "Maybe longer." She nodded once, like she was fitting puzzle pieces together. "I always wondered why he asked so many questions about the trust," she said quietly. "After your dad died, he asked me once if there were mental health clauses. I thought he was just being cautious." My stomach dropped again. "Mom," I said, "did you ever sign anything he brought you?" "No," she said immediately. "If it wasn't from Daniel or directly from the trust board, I didn't touch it. Your father made me promise." Relief washed through me so fast I had to look down at my plate. "He talked to Jason," I said. She closed her eyes briefly. "That boy," she said softly. "He always wanted approval more than money." We sat in silence for another minute. Then she reached across the table and put her hand over mine. "What do you need?" she asked. I looked at her. Really looked. "I need you to not confront anyone," I said. "Not Ryan, not Jason, not the firm, not yet." She studied my face for a long moment. "You're planning something," she said. "Yes," she nodded. "Okay," she said. "Then I trust you." I squeezed her hand once. Because the truth was, tonight wasn't about comfort. Tonight was about confirmation. And now I had it. Ryan hadn't just betrayed me as a husband. He had tried to erase me legally, financially, professionally, and personally. And the more evidence I gathered, the clearer something else became. He thought he had already won, which meant he wasn't looking for what I was about to do next. I left my mom's house a little after 7:30 p.m., with leftovers in a glass container and a calm I didn't trust, but decided to use anyway. The drive back to my house felt shorter than usual. The sky was turning that deep Texas purple, streetlights flickering on one by one. My phone stayed quiet in the cup holder. No calls from Ryan, no texts. That told me two things. Either he was busy celebrating, or he thought I was exactly where he wanted me, stunned, confused, and waiting for instructions. When I pulled into the driveway, his car was there. I sat in mine for a moment, engine off, watching the porch light glow. My pulse was steady, no shaking, no racing thoughts, just a very clear sense that I was walking into a performance, and I needed to play my role perfectly. I grabbed my bag, stepped out, and walked up the front steps. Ryan was in the kitchen when I came in, sleeves rolled up, glass of bourbon in his hand like it was any other night. He looked over his shoulder when he heard the door. "There you are," he said. "Not warm, not cold, just measured." "I had dinner with my mom," I said, setting my bag down. "Good," he said. "You should spend time with her." Like he hadn't helped build a plan to cut me out of the thing my dad built for me. I walked to the fridge, opened it, and took out a bottle of water. My hands were steady. I could feel his eyes on my back, watching for cracks. "How was the rest of the showcase?" I asked, twisting the cap. "Strong," he said. "A couple follow-up meetings already scheduled." "That's good," I said, and took a sip. Silence stretched between us, the hum of the fridge, ice shifting in his glass. "Madison," he said finally, "we should talk about how we present things publicly moving forward." I turned and leaned back against the counter. "Okay." His eyes narrowed slightly, like that was not the response he expected. "I think," he said slowly, "it's best if we position you as head of clinical strategy. Still very important. Still core to the mission. Just not the face of the company." I nodded once, like I was considering it. "That makes sense," I said. Relief flickered across his face again. Small, fast, but there. "And," he continued, "it might help if you take a little time off. Just a few weeks. Reset. Focus on yourself." "You mean so people get used to you being the only one speaking?" I said. But I kept my tone neutral, almost curious. His jaw tightened slightly. "I mean, so you don't burn out?" I nodded again. "Okay." He stared at me, longer this time. "You're taking this really well," he said. I shrugged. "What's the alternative?" He studied my face like he was trying to solve a math problem. "Look," he said, softer now. "I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it because someone had to make hard calls." I thought about the trust access request, the governance files, The capacity review language. Of course, I said. He stepped closer, like he might try to reestablish something familiar. We're still a team, he said. I met his eyes. Sure, I said. Something in my voice must have unsettled him, because he stepped back and drained the rest of his bourbon. I'm going to finish some emails, he said. Early day tomorrow. Okay, I said. He walked past me toward his office. I listened to the door close. Then I set my water down and went to my office nook, sat at my desk, and opened my desktop again. This was the moment everything shifted. Not emotionally, structurally, because now I knew his plan. I knew his timeline. And more importantly, I knew his blind spot. Ryan believed control came from paperwork and perception. He believed if he owned the story, he owned the outcome. He had never really understood how the product worked. He understood the pitch, the market, the narrative, but not the architecture. I opened a secure email draft and typed 3 names into the address bar. Dr. Lila Chen, original research collaborator. Marcus Hale, original firmware developer. Daniel Ortiz, Fairbank Trust. I didn't send anything yet. Instead, I opened the original licensing agreement Dad's attorney had insisted on when we first moved from research into commercial development. At the time, Ryan called it overkill. Now I read it line by line. Core algorithm licensing remained tied to original clinical research authorship, unless formally reassigned with notarized clinical sign-off and board medical ethics review. I had never signed a reassignment. Never. I opened the firmware developer contract next. Source control root access remained dual authenticated through original development credentials. Mine. Not the company's. Mine. I leaned back slowly in my chair. Ryan had spent months building legal pathways to control the company structure, but he had built it on top of a technical and licensing foundation he didn't control. My phone buzzed quietly. A text from Ryan, from down the hallway. Proud of you today. I know this is hard. I stared at it for a long second. Then I typed back. I'm okay, just tired. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Get some sleep, big week ahead. I set the phone face down. Then I opened a new folder on the external drive. I named it Phase 2. Inside, I started organizing. Licensing clauses, access credential structures, developer agreements, grant compliance requirements, regulatory reporting triggers. Not to destroy him, to remove the ground he thought he was standing on. I worked until almost midnight, cross-referencing documents, flagging clauses, building timelines. At 11:47 p.m., I finally shut down the desktop. The house was quiet. Ryan's office light was off. I walked to the bedroom, changed into pajamas, and slid into bed without turning on the light. Ryan was already asleep, breathing slow and even, like nothing in his life was unstable. I stared at the ceiling in the dark. 6 months ago, he had used my laptop while I slept to shift legal control structures. Tonight, I lay next to him, knowing something he didn't. He thought he was slowly replacing me. What he didn't understand was that the most important parts of what we built were never his to take. And if he kept moving forward with his plan, he wasn't just risking losing me. He was risking losing everything he thought he had already won. I woke up at 5:18 a.m. without an alarm, the same way I used to wake up when I had early patient evaluations at the clinic. For a few seconds, I lay still and listened. The house was quiet. Ryan's breathing steady beside me, the air vent humming softly overhead. It could have been any normal morning from 2 years ago, before the startup, before the incubator, before I let someone else slowly rewrite the map of my life. I slid out of bed carefully and walked to the bathroom, closing the door behind me without making noise. I turned on the shower and let the water run hot, not because I needed it yet, but because the sound covered everything else. I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look broken. I didn't look unstable. I looked tired, older than 32 in a way that had nothing to do with age. Good, I thought. Tired people look harmless. I showered quickly, dressed in jeans and a plain gray sweater, and pulled my hair back. No makeup. Same normal version of me Ryan had grown used to ignoring. In the kitchen, I made coffee and toast, moving quietly, like muscle memory was carrying me forward. At 5:46 a.m., I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop and opened my email. 3 drafts waited in my outbox from last night. I opened the first one, Dr. Lila Chen. Subject: quick check-in, licensing, clarification. I read it one more time. No accusations. No emotion. Just clinical questions about original research, licensing boundaries, and whether any reassignment documents had ever been processed through the ethics board. I hit send. Next, Marcus Hale. Subject: quick technical question, source control permissions. Same tone. Simple question about confirming root credential structure and whether any recent override attempts had been logged. Send. Last, Daniel Ortiz. Subject. Follow-up trust protection and documentation request. Requesting certified copies of any attempted capacity filings and associated legal routing history. Send. I closed the laptop and took a sip of coffee, just as Ryan walked into the kitchen. Early, he said, reaching for a mug. Couldn't sleep? I said. He poured coffee, leaned against the counter, and checked his phone. We have a partner call at 9, he said. And I need you on it. Okay, I said. He looked up. Just listen. Don't volunteer anything unless I bring you in. Got it, I said. He nodded, satisfied, then checked his watch. I might swing by Westlake and Dunn later, he said casually. Just to clean up some paperwork. My stomach didn't move. My face didn't change. Okay, I said again. He studied me for half a second, then shrugged and walked out to get ready for work. By 6:30 a.m., he was gone. By 6:32 a.m., I opened my laptop again. Dr. Chen had already replied. Madison. No reassignment ever came through ethics review. If anyone is claiming licensing transfer, that would be non-compliant. Call me if you need formal confirmation. I saved it. Next, Marcus. Hey, Mads. No root transfer attempts approved. There were 2 failed override attempts about 3 weeks ago from an admin-level company login. Didn't go through because your dev key is still primary. I leaned back slowly. Ryan had tried to take technical control and failed. I saved that too. Then I started building something new. Not an attack, a map. I opened a blank document and started writing, if Ryan proceeds with Series A licensing verification, required triggers compliance review. If compliance review triggered original research, ownership must be verified. If verified company cannot legally claim full product ownership without original inventor sign-off, then I added another layer. If investor due diligence expands, grant funding use must be audited. If audited trust distribution linkage to prototype development becomes visible, I stopped typing and stared at the screen. He had built his entire takeover strategy, assuming speed would protect him, that if he moved fast enough, no one would check the foundation. He was wrong. At 8:55 a.m., I joined the partner call from my office nook. Ryan joined from what looked like a conference room. The call was exactly what I expected. Market expansion talk, manufacturing scaling, regulatory timeline projections. Ryan talked. I stayed quiet unless directly asked something technical. When I did answer, I was precise, professional, calm. At one point, one of the partners said, great to have the clinical perspective in the room. Ryan smiled tightly. Madison built a lot of the early research backbone. Built. Past tense. I let it go. The call ended at 9:47 a.m. At 10:12 a.m., Daniel replied, Madison, we have documented evidence of the attempted capacity inquiry and associated legal routing. I strongly recommend you schedule an in-person review session with us this week. I forwarded it to my secure archive. Then I opened my calendar and blocked off Thursday afternoon. Trust review personal. At noon, I drove to a small co-working space across town, not the incubator. Somewhere Ryan never went. I rented a small conference room under my maiden name. At 12:47 p.m., I joined a video call with Dr. Chen and Marcus. I need to understand worst-case scenarios, I said. Not hypotheticals. Real ones. Dr. Chen nodded. Marcus leaned forward. Worst case, Marcus said. If he tries to push product release without proper licensing, the moment compliance checks hit, the whole thing freezes. Dr. Chen added, and if grant usage is misrepresented, that triggers federal reporting requirements. I nodded slowly. And if I say nothing? I asked. Then he keeps building, Marcus said. On borrowed ground. I ended the call at 1:32 p.m. I sat in that small conference room for another 10 minutes, staring at the whiteboard, because the plan wasn't to expose him today or tomorrow. The plan was to let him keep climbing, higher, faster, until there was only one way for him to go. I packed up, drove home, and walked into the quiet house around 3 p.m. Ryan wouldn't be back until late, investor dinner. Perfect. I sat at my desk and opened the Phase 2 folder again. Then I created a new subfolder. I named it, When He Asks for More, because I knew he would. And when he did, I would be ready. Not to fight him, to let him prove, in his own words, in his own paperwork, exactly who he really was. Ryan didn't ask for more the next day. He asked for more 3 days later, on a Sunday morning, while I was standing in the backyard watering the small herb garden I had planted before any of this started. The air was cool for Texas. The sky was pale blue. The kind of morning that makes you think life is simple if you don't look too closely. He slid the back door open and stepped outside, barefoot, coffee mug in hand. "You're up early," he said. "I like mornings," I said, turning the hose slightly so it didn't flood the rosemary. He stood there for a minute, watching me. Not suspicious. Not yet. Just measuring. "We got interest from a larger fund," he said finally. "Chicago-based. Adaptive tech vertical. Serious money." I nodded. "That's good. They want a fast timeline," he said. "Faster than we planned." I turned off the hose and set it down. "What does fast mean?" I asked. 3 weeks, he said. "They want to move toward Series A announcement at the National Adaptive Technology Expo next month. Chicago. Right on schedule." "That's aggressive," I said. "It's opportunity," he said. I nodded once, like I was thinking it through. "They'll want full diligence," I said. "Already started," he said. "And that's where you come in." There it was. "What do you need?" I asked. He exhaled slowly, like he was easing into something delicate. "We need to clean up the licensing chain," he said. "Just make it cleaner on paper. Nothing changes operationally." I leaned against the fence post. "What does cleaner mean?" I asked. "Just consolidating original research rights under Mercer Innovations," he said. "Instead of personal inventor retention, it makes investors more comfortable." I watched a bee move between the basil leaves. "And how do we do that?" I asked. "Simple reassignment document," he said. "Standard. You sign, we file. Done." I nodded slowly. "Okay," I said. The relief in his shoulders was almost invisible. But I saw it. "I'll have legal send it Monday," he said. Westlake and Dunn already drafted something. Of course they had. "Okay," I said again. He stepped closer, like he was about to say something personal. Then he stopped. "This is good," he said. "This is what partnership looks like." I met his eyes. "Yeah," I said. "It is." He went back inside. I stayed in the yard for another 2 minutes, then turned the hose off completely and walked in after him. At 9:14 a.m., my email pinged. Subject: Licensing Consolidation Execution Copy. Westlake. Done. I opened it. 23 pages. Clean. Professional. Calm language. No emotional flags. Just legal structure. Transfer of original clinical algorithm licensing from Madison Cole, individual inventor, to Mercer Innovations corporate entity. Buried on page 17. Future derivative works automatically assigned to corporate ownership. Retroactive validation of prior filings under corporate primary inventor designation. I saved it. Then I opened the Phase 2 folder. Then I created a new subfolder. Expo. Because now, everything had a clock attached to it. At 10:02 a.m., I emailed Dr. Chen. Need formal written confirmation that no reassignment has been ethically reviewed or approved. Timestamped. At 10:07 a.m., I emailed Marcus. Need log certification of failed admin override attempts. Timestamped. At 10:11 a.m., I emailed Daniel. Need certified timeline of capacity inquiry. Attempt and legal routing. Then I closed the laptop and walked into the living room. Ryan was on the couch, laptop open, building something in a spreadsheet. "I'll review the doc today," I said. "Good," he said without looking up. "I might have a few technical wording questions," I added. "That's fine," he said. "But this is standard stuff." "I know," I said. He finally looked up, studying my face again. "You're doing really well with all this," he said. I smiled slightly. "I'm learning." He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his spreadsheet. At 1:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Dr. Chen, formal statement drafted. Sending signed PDF now. Also, Madison, if anyone is pressuring you to sign quickly, that's a red flag." I saved it. At 2:12 p.m., Marcus sent his certification log. At 3:03 p.m., Daniel sent preliminary confirmation that the capacity inquiry attempt was officially recorded and rejected. I saved everything. By 4:30 p.m., I had built a complete documentation chain that connected original research ownership, technical access control, trust protection intent, attempted capacity inquiry, licensing reassignment pressure, not accusation, just facts. At 6 p.m., Ryan suggested takeout. We ate on the couch like nothing was wrong, like we were just another married couple planning a big work month. At 7:18 p.m., he said, "Did you review the document?" "Mostly," I said. "I just want to read it once more tomorrow." "That's fine," he said, but his voice had that tight edge again. "We just can't miss this window." "I won't," I said. At 9:45 p.m., he went to bed early. At 10:02 p.m., I opened my laptop again. I opened the licensing reassignment document. Then I opened a blank notes file next to it. Then I started highlighting sections that would trigger compliance review if filed without supporting ethics documentation. I wasn't editing his document. I was mapping what would happen if he used it. Because I wasn't going to stop him from trying. I was going to let him walk all the way to the edge of something he thought was solid ground and step forward on his own. At 11:38 p.m., I closed the laptop and sat in the dark living room, listening to the quiet house. 3 weeks until the expo. 3 weeks until he stood in front of investors and regulators and partners and told the biggest version of his story. And 3 weeks until the foundation he thought he owned would start answering questions he didn't even know existed. I turned off the last light and went to bed. Ryan shifted slightly when I got in, half awake. "You okay?" He mumbled. "Yeah," I said softly. And for the first time since this started, that wasn't a lie. Because now, it wasn't about surviving what he did. It was about deciding exactly when the truth would walk into the room. The 3 weeks before the expo moved fast on the outside and slow on the inside. Ryan was everywhere. Calls, dinners, press previews, internal strategy meetings. He moved through the house like a man already living in his next life. Sometimes he kissed the top of my head on his way out the door like muscle memory. Sometimes he forgot to say goodbye at all. I stayed steady. I joined calls when asked. I answered technical questions cleanly and briefly. I reviewed documents. I never pushed back. I never argued. I never gave him a reason to think I had changed from the version of me he had already written into his future. Meanwhile, I built quiet layers. By the second week, Dr. Chen had issued a formal ethics non-transfer statement on university letterhead. Marcus had notarized the system access certification. Daniel had prepared a full trust activity summary, showing the capacity inquiry attempt, routing chain, and rejection notes. I didn't send any of it to Ryan. I didn't send any of it to investors. I just stored it. Because timing mattered more than volume. The expo week arrived in a rush of airport security lines, rolling carry-ons, and too bright conference lighting. Ryan and I flew to Chicago on a Wednesday afternoon. He worked on his laptop most of the flight. I watched the wing cut through cloud layers and thought about the first time I flew with my dad, how he had explained lift and drag using a napkin and a pen. We landed just after 5 p.m. Central. At the hotel check-in desk, Ryan handled everything. Corporate card, polished smile, confident voice. 2 queen beds, the front desk woman said. Ryan paused for a half second, then nodded. That's fine. The elevator ride up was quiet. Inside the room, he dropped his bag, loosened his tie, and immediately opened his laptop on the desk. I have a late dinner with the fund partners, he said. You don't have to come. Okay, I said. He looked at me like he expected more. Maybe disappointment, maybe questions. I just set my bag on the other bed and started unpacking my laptop. Big day tomorrow, he said. Yeah, I said. He left at 6:45 p.m. At 6:52 p.m., I opened my email and sent 3 scheduled messages I had written 2 days earlier. One to Daniel, confirming I would attend the trust review call Friday morning. One to Dr. Chen, confirming she had received the expo presentation schedule. One to Marcus, confirming he had saved the system access logs to independent archive. Then I closed the laptop and ordered room service. Burger, fries, Diet Coke, normal food, normal night. At 10:14 p.m., Ryan came back. Slight smell of whiskey. Not drunk, just loose. Good dinner? I asked. Productive, he said. They're excited. I nodded. We present at 10 a.m. tomorrow, he said. Main hall stage. I know, I said. He studied my face for a long second, then just nodded and went to shower. I fell asleep before he came back to bed. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm again. Chicago light came through the hotel curtains, gray and soft. I showered, dressed in black slacks and a navy blouse, and pulled my hair into a low knot. When I turned around, Ryan was sitting on the edge of his bed, watching me. You ready? He asked. Yes, I said. He nodded once. You're doing the right thing, he said. I didn't answer. The expo center was massive. Glass, steel, polished floors that echoed with footsteps and conversation. Booths everywhere. Screens, demo tables. Investors with name badges that cost more than my first car. At 9:40 a.m., we stood backstage. Ryan reviewed his slides on a tablet. I stood next to him, hands folded loosely, looking exactly like supportive leadership staff. You'll stand stage left, he said, in case someone asks clinical questions. Okay, I said. He looked at me again, longer this time. After today? He said quietly. Everything changes. I know, I said. At 9:58 a.m., they called his name. The lights were brighter than the incubator showcase. The audience bigger. Hundreds of people. maybe more. Ryan walked out like he belonged there. Good morning, he said into the mic. I'm Ryan Mercer, founder and CEO of Mercer Innovations. Applause. The presentation started. Same story, but bigger, cleaner, more confident. The slides moved behind him. Market projections, growth curves, manufacturing timelines. At the origin story slide, he said, a family experience with loss showed me how critical independence technology really is. I stood still, breathed slowly, watched. At Tia, Art and Amen, he moved into product demonstration video. At 10:22 a.m., he moved into IP and scaling strategy. I felt my pulse tick up slightly. This was the section where everything became either solid or fragile. And we have fully consolidated licensing and ownership structures, he said smoothly, allowing us to scale without legacy fragmentation. I didn't move. The slide behind him showed a clean corporate ownership flowchart. At 10:26 a.m., he wrapped the pitch. Applause. Louder this time. The moderator stepped forward. We have time for a few questions. First question, manufacturing scaling. Second question, regulatory approval timelines. Then a man in the third row stood up. Can you clarify original research licensing continuity, given the university collaboration listed in early filings? Ryan smiled, confident, relaxed. Absolutely, he said. All original licensing has been properly consolidated under Mercer Innovations. I felt my chest tighten slightly, but I stayed still. The moderator pointed to another raised hand. A woman in the front row. Can you speak to grant compliance structure relative to initial prototype funding sources? Ryan nodded, like this was routine. Of course, he said. All early funding was properly documented and transitioned into corporate capital structure. The room stayed quiet, not tense, just attentive. Ryan moved to close the Q&A. Then the moderator glanced at a tablet, then back at the audience. We actually have time for one more question, she said. A man near the aisle stood. Have there been any recent compliance or licensing reviews triggered by your expansion timeline? Ryan hesitated for half a second, then smiled again. Routine reviews happen all the time, he said. Nothing outside standard process. I stood stage left, hands folded, breathing slow, because I knew something he didn't. Because 3 separate compliance verification notices had been automatically triggered when his legal team submitted preliminary licensing consolidation filings 2 days earlier. And I knew those notices were already moving through systems he couldn't charm, or rush, or talk around. Ryan finished. Applause again. We walked off stage. Backstage, he exhaled like a man who had just crossed a finish line. That went well, he said. Yes, I said. He smiled, and I realized, standing in that bright hallway with applause still echoing faintly through the walls, he had no idea the questions had already started. And they weren't coming from the audience anymore. Backstage, after the presentation, felt like controlled chaos. People moved in tight circles. Handshakes, quick introductions, assistants checking schedules on tablets. Someone handed Ryan a bottle of water. Someone else asked if he had 10 minutes for a private conversation with a fund partner. He looked energized, lighter than I had seen him in months, like he had just proven something to the world and to himself at the same time. Give me 15, he told an event coordinator. Then he turned to me. We need to be at the partner suite at 11. Okay, I said. We walked down a long hallway lined with glass meeting rooms. Ryan's phone buzzed once. He ignored it. It buzzed again. He glanced at the screen this time, then slipped it back into his pocket without reacting. I noticed. At 10:41 a.m., we stepped into the partner suite. Plush chairs, long table, coffee setup that looked more expensive than my first apartment. 3 investors were already there. 2 men, 1 woman. All calm, all professional. Ryan, the woman said, standing. Great presentation. Thank you, he said, shaking hands. Really excited about where this is going. We all sat. I took a chair slightly back from the table, exactly where someone in my supposed role would sit. The first 5 minutes were normal. Growth timeline, manufacturing partner updates, hiring projections. Then the woman slid a tablet across the table. Before we move forward, she said, we need clarification on something that came up during preliminary diligence. Ryan smiled. Of course. Your legal team submitted licensing consolidation documentation on Monday, she said. Yes, he said. Standard cleanup. She nodded once. That submission triggered 3 independent compliance reviews. Ryan's smile didn't disappear, but it stopped reaching his eyes. Okay, he said. That's normal at scale. The man on her left spoke. Not at this level of flagging. Ryan leaned back slightly. Casual. Relaxed. Performance mode. What specifically are you seeing? he asked. The woman tapped the tablet screen. Original research licensing requires ethics board confirmation, she said. We contacted the university. Ryan nodded. Good. They have no record of reassignment review, she said. Silence stretched across the table. Not dramatic, just heavy. Ryan didn't look at me. Not yet. That must be a paperwork lag, he said smoothly. The second man spoke. Then there's the grant structure. Ryan nodded again. Fully compliant. Possibly, the man said. But we need documentation showing separation between personal trust distributions and corporate development cost recovery. Ryan's jaw tightened slightly, barely noticeable unless you knew him. We can provide that, he said. The woman nodded slowly. We'll need it quickly. Ryan leaned forward. Of course. She looked at him for a long second. Ryan, she said, calm and level. We like the product. A lot. But we don't fund uncertainty in ownership chains. I understand, he said. We're not pulling interest, she said. But we are pausing forward movement until review's complete. Ryan nodded. That's reasonable. Meeting over. Just like that. No shouting, no accusations, just professional gravity. We stood. Handshakes again. Polite smiles. Outside the suite, Ryan walked 3 steps before stopping. His phone buzzed again. He pulled it out. Read something. Then read it again. What? I asked. Neutral. He turned the screen off and slipped it into his pocket. Nothing, he said. We walked toward the main hall again. At 11:32 a.m., his phone rang. This time he answered. Yeah, he said, stepping a few feet away. I saw. Pause. No, that shouldn't have been triggered yet. Longer pause. Okay, just send me everything. He hung up, turned back to me. Minor compliance noise, he said. Okay, I said. At 12:15 p.m., we sat in the food court area with conference sandwiches. Neither of us really ate. Ryan's phone buzzed 3 more times. Each time, his answers got shorter. By 1:05 p.m., he stopped answering and just read messages. At 1:22 p.m., he stood suddenly. I need to step outside, he said. Okay, I said. I stayed at the table, opened my water bottle, took a sip, watched people move past in clusters of networking and opportunity. At 1:38 p.m., he came back. His face looked exactly the same, but his eyes didn't. We need to talk tonight, he said quietly. Okay, I said. The rest of the afternoon blurred into booths and demos and polite conversations. But something had shifted. Not publicly, not loudly, structurally. By 4:45 p.m., we were back at the hotel. Ryan sat in the desk chair, elbows on his knees, phone in both hands. I need to ask you something, he said finally. I sat on the other bed. Okay. Did you talk to the university? He asked. No, I said. Did you talk to the trust? He asked. No, I said. Both were technically true. I hadn't initiated the compliance triggers. He had. He stared at me like he was trying to read something under my skin. Okay, he said finally. At 7:10 p.m., he ordered room service but barely touched it. At 9:03 p.m., he said, there are some review processes happening. Nothing serious, just paperwork. Okay, I said. He studied my face again. You believe me? He asked. I met his eyes. Yes, I said. He nodded. Relief mixed with something else. Fear, maybe, but not fully formed yet. At 11:12 p.m., he fell asleep sitting up against the headboard, phone still in his hand. I sat in the dark hotel room, city lights bleeding through the curtains, because now it had started. Not because I exposed him, because he tried to rewrite things that were designed to resist rewriting. And systems, real systems, didn't care about confidence. They cared about records. And records had very long memories. Ryan woke up sometime after midnight, the blue glow of his phone lighting the side of his face. I kept my breathing slow and even, eyes closed, the way you do when you don't want someone to know you're awake. He slid out of bed quietly and stepped into the hallway outside the room. The hotel door clicked shut behind him. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. 3 weeks ago, I would have followed him. Asked questions. Tried to fix whatever was going wrong. Now I just rolled onto my side and listened to the low hum of the hotel air unit. He came back 10 minutes later. I kept my eyes closed. He stood by the bed for a second like he was studying me, then lay back down. In the morning, he was already dressed when I woke up. I have an early meeting downstairs, he said. You can sleep in. Okay, I said, sitting up slowly. He nodded once, grabbed his jacket, and left. The moment the door closed, I got out of bed, showered, and got dressed in the same calm, neutral clothes I had worn all week. At 8:12 a.m., I joined the trust review call from the small business center on the second floor of the hotel. Daniel was there. So was one of the senior trust board attorneys and a compliance officer. They walked me through everything slowly and clearly. Timeline of Ryan's access request. Language used in the capacity inquiry. Legal routing path through Westlake and Dunn. Internal notes showing it had been flagged as spousal escalation attempt. No drama, no judgment, just documentation. Madison, the compliance officer said gently, we need to ask directly. Are you safe making your own financial and medical decisions? Yes, I said. Are you under pressure to transfer authority or assets? Yes, I said, then corrected myself. I was. I'm not signing anything. They nodded. We're locking additional notification layers onto your trust accounts, Daniel said. No changes without direct voice confirmation from you. Thank you, I said. The call ended at 9:03 a.m. I sat there for a minute, looking at my reflection in the dark laptop screen. Not broken, not unstable, not confused. Just finished pretending I didn't see what was happening. At 10:15 a.m., I met Ryan in the hotel lobby. He looked like he hadn't slept much. Same suit, same posture, but there was tightness around his mouth now. We need to talk, he said. Okay, I said. We walked outside, across the street to a small public plaza with metal tables and concrete planters. It was cold enough that only a few people were sitting outside. Ryan sat. I sat across from him. He didn't speak for almost a full minute. Then he said, there are formal reviews happening now. I know, I said. His eyes snapped up. What do you mean you know? I mean, I said evenly, that if licensing consolidation paperwork gets filed without supporting documentation, compliance systems usually trigger review processes. He stared at me. You knew this would happen, he said. I knew it could, I said. His jaw flexed. You should have told me, he said. I didn't file anything, I said. That's not the point, he snapped. Then he stopped, ran a hand over his face, and lowered his voice again. Madison, we need to fix this. We? I said. Yes, he said quickly. We. This is our company, our future. I studied him, really studied him. You tried to prove I was mentally unstable, I said quietly. His face went completely still. That's not what happened, he said. You submitted a capacity inquiry to my trust, I said. You built internal governance protocols to remove me from leadership if I became emotionally disruptive. That was contingency planning, he said, too fast. You used my therapy appointments as supporting language, I said. I was trying to protect the company, he said. There it was. Not sorry. Not regret, just justification. You were trying to protect yourself, I said. He leaned forward, voice low and urgent. Madison, listen to me. If investors think there's instability in leadership, they walk. I was managing risk. You were managing me, I said. Silence again. People walked past us. Someone laughed somewhere behind us. The city kept moving. You signed up for this, he said finally. When you quit your job. When you let me handle investor relationships. When you agreed I should lead public strategy. I never agreed to disappear, I said. You were overwhelmed, he said. I was working, I said. Building the thing you're standing on. He sat back, breathing harder now. We can still fix this, he said. You sign the reassignment. We clean up the licensing chain. Reviews close. Investors calm down. We move forward. I felt something deep in my chest finally settle completely. You never actually controlled the core licensing, I said. His eyes narrowed. What? The original algorithm licensing is tied to clinical authorship and ethics review, I said. I never signed reassignment. It never went through review. He stared at me like I had just spoken another language. That's not possible, he said. It is, I said. You would have told me, he said. I assumed you read the original agreements, I said. His face went pale. And the firmware root access? I said. Still tied to original dev credentials. Mine. He looked like the ground had shifted under him. You set me up, he said. No, I said quietly. You just never asked how anything actually worked. He stared at me for a long time. Then he said, softer, almost pleading, Madison, we're married. I held his gaze. Yes, I said. We were. He swallowed hard. You're going to destroy everything we built, he said. I'm not doing anything, I said. I'm just not stopping systems from asking questions. He sat there, breathing hard, hands gripping the edge of the table. And for the first time since I met him, Ryan Mercer looked like a man who realized he had built his entire future on something he never actually owned. I stood up. I'm going back to the hotel, I said. He didn't stop me. Because I think in that moment, he finally understood something he had refused to believe for months. I wasn't the thing he could manage anymore. And whatever happened next wasn't something he could talk his way out of. I checked out of the hotel the next morning before Ryan woke up. Not dramatically. Not in the middle of the night. Just at 6:30 a.m. With one suitcase, a printed receipt, and a quiet thank you to the front desk clerk. I left his room key on the desk next to his laptop charger. Then I called a rideshare and watched downtown Chicago slide past the window on the way to the airport. The city looked gray and steady, and completely uninterested in the fact that my marriage had just ended in a plaza next to a coffee cart. On the flight back to Austin, I didn't cry. I didn't sleep much either. I just watched the wing and thought about timelines. Not revenge timelines. Recovery timelines. When I landed, my phone turned back on to a flood of notifications. Missed calls from Ryan. 3 texts from Jason. 2 emails from Westlake and Dunn marked urgent. 1 email from Daniel marked trust update, no action required from you. I opened Daniel's first. Madison. Additional protective flags have been applied. Any further external inquiries will be automatically escalated. You are secure. I exhaled slowly. I didn't answer Ryan. I didn't answer Jason. Not yet. Instead, I drove straight home, pulled into the driveway, and sat in my car for a minute looking at the front door. The same door Ryan had walked through 1,000 times. The same house where we had planned a future that turned out to be built on assumptions instead of reality. Inside, the house was quiet. Ryan wasn't there. His closet was half empty. Not cleanly. Not organized. Just rushed. Shirts gone. Some shoes missing. The drawer where he kept watches was open. On the kitchen counter, his laptop bag was gone. But next to the coffee maker, there was a folded piece of paper. I picked it up. Madison. I need time to figure out next steps. I never meant for this to get this far. I was trying to protect what we built. Era. I read it once. Then I set it down. No apology. Just justification with softer words. I walked to my office nook, sat down, and opened my desktop. By noon, I had sent 3 emails. 1 to Dr. Chen confirming I would be formally reestablishing independent licensing structure. 1 to Marcus, confirming system credentials would remain unchanged and under original development authority. 1 to the compliance contact listed in the expo review packet providing full documentation chain of original authorship, grant compliance structure, and licensing integrity. Nothing aggressive, nothing dramatic, just facts and timestamps. Then I opened a new document. Cole Adaptive Systems Independent Rebuild. Because that was the truth now. Not Mercer Innovations, not our company, mine. The next few weeks were quiet on the surface and loud underneath. Ryan tried twice to schedule meetings. I declined both times through lawyers. Westlake and Dunn sent 2 formal letters requesting clarification on licensing status. My attorney responded with documentation they couldn't argue with. Jason called 6 times. I answered once. I didn't know it would go this far, he said. You helped build it, I said. I thought he was stabilizing things, he said. I was never unstable, I said. He didn't argue. We didn't talk again after that. 3 months later, Mercer Innovations announced a strategic restructuring. 6 months later, Ryan left the company. I didn't follow what happened next in detail. I heard things through industry circles. Investor disputes. Regulatory reviews. Product delays tied to licensing clarification. Then, almost a year after the expo, I saw his name again in an industry newsletter. New startup. New partners. New pitch about ethical adaptive technology leadership. 2 months after that, another article. Federal investigation into grant misuse tied to a prior adaptive tech venture. Not charges yet. Just investigation. I closed the article and went back to my work, because my life didn't revolve around what happened to Ryan anymore. By then, Cole Adaptive Systems was real. Small. Careful. Honest. Built slower than venture money liked, but built on things that actually belonged to me. The first production device we shipped went to a rehab hospital outside San Antonio. The first email I got back from a patient said, I buttoned my shirt by myself today. I printed that email and taped it to my office wall. On the 1-year anniversary of the expo, I stayed late at the office. Everyone else had gone home. The building lights were dim. The city outside was warm and loud and alive. I stood in front of the window and thought about that morning in my Austin kitchen when my phone buzzed with a press release that erased me. Ryan thought he was ending something that day. He thought he was writing the final version of the story where I was too emotional, too unstable, too small to hold what I built. Instead, he handed me something he never meant to. Clarity. The kind that only comes when someone finally shows you exactly who they are. I turned off my office lights, locked the door, and stepped out into the night air. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like I had gotten revenge. I felt steady, because everything I had believed about my life had collapsed, and what was left standing was finally something that was mine.